Hi, folks. My name's Tom. You're watching Rant District. A fair warning: maybe this is not out of the norm. This is going to come across as old man shakes fist at clouds, and kind of thought about shooting this outside. Kind of looking up at the clouds but bear with me as you normally do. So last night, a little late at night, I was listening to "Goat" by the Jesus Lizard. It's on Touch and Go from 1971. There's a look at the label. Touch and Go, 1991. And with headphones, when you're listening on headphones, you really don't miss much, if anything. And I just got lost in the music. Which I will with this album, even on speakers, but on headphones, there's nothing else messing around with what you're hearing. And it just struck me like how, not just what a great record it is musically, but just how good it sounds. The sound quality is amazing. While he's not listed on here, this is produced by Steve Albini. So, in Touch and Go, you kind of figure that's probably going to be the case anyway. But so that it sounds great, like it's really well recorded, is not a surprise. But it just, as I'm listening, in my head, I'm just thinking, man, this is it's what we think of when people talk about like a audiophile record nowadays. And, this is from, 1991. When I'm not sure if DCC was doing stuff back then or whoever. Yeah, I guess MoFi was, predates this. But anyway, like audiophile records, excuse me, audiophile records were just records. Records in general sounded good. There was a level of expertise. People in record plants have been making records for ages. Even though by 1991 it had dropped off, there were people who knew how to record a band, how to produce, how to master, and there was expertise in pressing records. And I think nowadays, since especially in the last few years, so many record plants have come online. Nobody's got, or very few people have, decades of experience doing that anymore. So now, an audiophile record is kind of it's a thing. Instead of it just being a record and records generally sounded good, records generally, newer records nowadays, generally don't sound anywhere near as good. I think there's there's a sheen over the music. I think a lot of it, I think a lot of things, when they're assembled in Pro Tools and maybe not mastered for vinyl or mastered well for vinyl, it just sounds dull, and which is unfair a lot of times to the music, because the music itself might be just phenomenal, but when the sound is dull, you're not as pulled in and you're not as likely to reach for the record. I was thinking of this record and kind of thinking about Rhino Hi-Fi. So as ridiculous as it is, I grabbed, even though I already have an original, I grabbed a copy of the Rhino Devo Freedom of Choice. Put the record on, and on the record, it's heavy. It's a 180 gram vinyl in a big, oversized, ridiculously oversized record sleeve that weighs like 5 to 8 pounds. Compared to this Jesus Lizard record, it's just kind of floppy, but it just has to cover the record. That's what its point is, other than having some, credits on it. So you got this oversized packaging. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I put the record on, the Devo record on, halfway through Girl You Want, the first track on the A side. I'm like, for a couple of revolutions, I hear like, and, it turns out there's, apparently non-fill in that spot on the record on a lot of copies. I wrote to Rhino 6 days ago asking for a return label or how to return it, because I don't have the highest standard for records, but when something is wrong, and especially that early in the record, it just snaps me right out of it, and I'm like, I'm not even interested in listening to the rest of it. So anyway, and I haven't heard back from Rhino. But anyway, it's like this $40 audiophile record, and they can't press it right. And just reading on the forums online, and Arnaldo, if you know his channel, Fidelios_frequency, he's got that problem. So it's a fairly, from what I can tell, widespread problem. I think there's a lot more people that have the problem than are bringing it up. So anyway, so when you're marketing this record as audiophile, that should have a sound quality and a level of engagement, in drawing you in, that most records had back, when records were the primary sound carrier, outside of the radio. When you're paying more for a record, you just expect it to sound good, and it was disappointing. And it's funny even that I tried, another Rhino Hi-Fi record, after trying the Rhino Hi-Fi television self-titled record. I believe, at the moment, I think Kevin Gray, who got it, I think he's in The Hague being tried for crimes against humanity. That thing was terrible. I mean, just what he did to that album was criminal. Which is funny, because I also, when I got the Devo Freedom of Choice, I picked up the Black Sabbath. That was a primary reason for placing the order. Getting the Devo is because I was getting the Black Sabbath anyway, so why not? Because the Black Sabbath self-titled album that I have is 1970 Aussie version, so I'm used to hearing Evil Woman on it, and the U.S. version on side 2. First track of side 2, whereas the U.S. version has Wicked World. So I thought, all right, why don't I'm going to try out the Black Sabbath because it's got a different track listing, essentially. It'd be nice to have a version with a different track listing. And that, which, Kevin Gray did, is phenomenal. It's cut kind of loud, like the raindrops at the beginning are way louder than, my Aussie version. The raindrops are very soft, so kind of tells me the dynamics are maybe a little bit less, but it's not, and the volume it's cut louder than my Australian version, but it's not, the sound quality is not crunched, which is weird, but it's not crunched. It really sounds fantastic. But anyway, so now I have a good copy of a U.S. version of the album, but the Devo version has to go back. Again, putting aside that this is, a phenomenal record musically, it sounds phenomenal, and it's just like so many records of, I was gonna say that era, but as you go into the '90s, there's a lot of, the vinyl versions of albums had way more songs than they did prior to the '90s because CDs were the primary sound carrier, and so bands would fill up CDs with filler songs, and so when you press that on vinyl, you're putting sometimes 25, 30 minutes of music on one side of a record. That's not the case here. It's 4 tracks on one side and 5 on the other. 5 on the other. I don't recall the runtime, but it's not long on this. So, it's a good chance of a record like this sounding good, but, produced by Steve Albini. Phenomenal. Records, anyway, long story longer. All records used to be audiophile records, and now it's like a niche thing, and that's kind of ridiculous. Get off my lawn. Thanks for watching.